Hi, this is Carl Leopson at the University of Arizona, and for my class for SERP 590, I want to walk you through the application for a human research form that I've asked you to include with your project. Keep in mind, I want you to just have the experience of going through this form and filling it out to the best of your ability. That doesn't mean that you need to have all of the pieces of it together. Even fill things out briefly, fill sections out and get it wrong. Doesn't matter to me, really. What I want you to do is see what it takes to get a project like this, project like yours, through human subjects. And that's important for a couple of reasons. One is because I think by going through this process, you get a better sense of how you would do your project in the real world. And the other is that I know some of you will be interested in doing your project or turning your project into your master's project or your dissertation project. And I think you need to start thinking about the practical aspects. And if you're going to do one of those two things, in either case, you would have to have your project approved through the human subject approval process, right? So we'll walk through it pretty quickly. I'll just try to point out some of the more, some of the interesting elements about each section and how you might fill it out. Also, keep in mind, this form is almost brand new, and even though I review a lot of these projects for my department, I've not even had one of these come across my desk yet in the newer format. Okay? So let's start at the top. This is simple. Contact information. You are the PI. They need a way to contact you, and once you have a project in the pipeline, believe me, they contact you to get you to do updates or ask questions. Up here, the title of the project. Every project needs a title. The reason they ask about if it's different if funded, if you have a project funded, they want the title to be the same on all the documents that are going through the folks over in the funding portion of the university, the folks that deal with sponsored projects. They want to be able to match it up more easily, so they want you to use a consistent title across everything you do with a piece of research. Okay. Down here you note your status, alternate contacts, and there are you add people as you need to, but it's probably your if you're a student, then it's going to be your advisor, and that person will also get emails to help the human subjects folks stay in contact with you. The first section is about general information, so expected length of the project for your projects. Figure about 6 months. That gives you time to recruit and actually get your project started, get initial data collected, get any maintenance data collected, and then wind up the project by getting feedback on the project back to the people involved in it, and then completing project closure documents through IRB. And yes, there are separate documents that you use to close your project at the IRB, and actually you have to send in yearly update documents and documents to close your project. If you don't close a project properly, they will not let you open a new project. So researchers can get in a lot of trouble by willy-nilly running things through IRB and then not running the projects, just letting them fall by the wayside. That's what we used to do. Can't do that anymore. You got to take it really seriously. When you open something, it's open and it has to be closed properly. We won't get into all that. It's just something I think you need to know. So, is the project strictly a review of data or specimens? No, you're working with real people. So you would say no. But you would be doing recruitment, interaction, and gaining consent from individuals. Is a University of Arizona seating IRB review to another university? Will we be coordinating a multi-university study? Will we be the IRB of record for a multi-university study? These three questions have to do with projects and piece of research that happen across multiple universities. So let's say I'm working with the University of Missouri. They have a major grant and I'm a subcontractor as a researcher. Often the IRB goes through the University of Missouri, even for something I would be doing here at the University of Arizona. But I still have to file IRB documents here. It would just be that the University of Missouri would have control. Okay. I told you this gets complicated, and it just gets more complicated when you add more universities. I like this question. Does the project involve medical procedures which the PI is not licensed to conduct? It seems like an odd question to me. I guess it's not. I guess they want to make sure that if you're not licensed to do it, you've included people who are licensed to do the medical procedures. Is this an investigator-initiated study? That would be a yes for any of you. And is this project a clinical trial? If you read the definition here of a clinical trial, you could be massaged either way, and we're working to try to make sure that we're not considered clinical trials because that calls for a lot more oversight. So the answer there right now would be no. And then, is it supported by any funding? No. Then location of the research. Is it going to be on campus? Is it going to be other? You notice that actually, if you were able to download and really use this form, when you click on certain pieces of it, it opens up sections for you to add information, right? So if you were going to be doing this at some outside clinic, at a school, at a correctional facility, you would write that description down here. Okay. The next section is about financial conflict of interest disclosure. This is a big deal at the university. Anytime that you get a grant to do a project, anytime you file to start a research project, you must, as a PI, fill out a conflict of interest disclosure form. And you go through a little online training for that. It takes about 10 minutes to do. They just want to make sure that you don't have any outside financial or personal interests that conflict with collecting data and working with human subjects in ways that would influence you. Although we all know that you definitely, and researchers regardless, have some personal interest in how their research studies go, but they're really more interested in the financial side of it. All right. So then we get to the meat of this whole document, which includes project abstract. Here they want background information, a kind of a scholarly approach to it. Then the next part is purpose. That's where you put your research question or questions. Okay, so up top. So the first part, the background, that's like basically you cut and paste into that your intro, your intro to your proposal, as long as it's less than 10,000 characters. Okay? And then under purpose, you cut and paste in your research question. Then under lay summary in 2,000 characters, you give a brief description of it again. I've tried copying again pieces of the background because I write in a very lay summary kind of way. They're having none of that. You cannot copy over pieces. It needs to be a completely different description that is even more simple than the one you provide in background. And then here under resources, they want you to kind of list, they want to be sure that you have some resources to actually conduct this study, or why should you even start it. You can be really brief there. Just, yes, we have personnel, we have facilities, and we have folks who know how to collect and analyze the data. It's pretty much all you need to let them know. Population and recruitment here is where you let them know the kinds of folks you're going to work with. So but what they've done is they've kind of hidden within here all of the protected populations, right? So if you click on children, then they tell you, oh yes, you need to submit an appendix for vulnerable populations. Interestingly, cognitively impaired subjects are not a protected population. You can work with adults, they're not protected. Native Americans, protective. Pregnant women and neonates, protected population. Prisoners, protected population. Refugees are not a protected population, I think. Probably just because there have not been openly problems with folks working with refugees and doing things wrong. And then UA staff, students, and if you click other, they ask you to explain. Under here are the inclusion and exclusion criteria for your study participation. So you should have that as part of your subject description, right? Remember, you're supposed to have in there what are the inclusion and exclusion criteria for participation in the study. You should be able to cut that out and paste it right in here. If you don't have it that way in your proposal yet, time to create it, because then you'll have it for both places. So something like if you say, yeah, children 1 through 17, what are the inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria? Individuals to be included in this study will be of middle school age. They will have a record of ADHD in their file, and they will be nominated by a teacher for participation. Those could be inclusion criteria. Students or participants, exclusion criteria for participants in this study would be any students who show other cognitive impairments or have physical characteristics that keep them from participating in the study. I guess I'm thinking of one of the students in your class, one of the students in our class who wants to do a study with kiddos with ADHD and improving their on-task behavior by having them sit on inflatable balls, right, at their desk. So you couldn't include kids who had physical characteristics that wouldn't allow them to use that as seating. Okay. All right. They want more detail about the age range, gender, ethnicity of the population. Again, like I said, this forces you to think really concretely about your study. Here you select all the methods you're going to use. And to recruit people. So flyers, emails, whatever you might be using. most likely we use in-person presentations. I don't want to go into great detail about all the restrictions on recruitment. A lot of that is in that investigator's manual. But recruitment's hard, okay? And we often get things turned back to us because you have to ensure in recruitment that you are not coercing people. And that can be as simple as if you stand in front of a group of teachers and you can't say, everybody raise your hand who wants to be in my study. You can't do that because that coerces folks who might be in difficult situations. You might feel like they had to raise their hand because their peers are raising their hands. They had to raise their hand because their principal was there and they wanted to make it look like they were a willing participant in things that were going on at the school. I don't want to go into that in more depth now. What we often do is we come up with a recruitment procedure and then we call our friends and we make friends over at IRB and we run it by them to see if it works for them and how they might change it. Okay. Informed consent. So in all of these projects with people, you would need to get informed consent, whether that was in a written form, okay, whether that was just online, if they're able to assent and they are under 18, meaning they can't sign legally for themselves to participate, but it's important that they know that they're involved in something. That's called assent. In which case you also want a parental permission form, right? Do you need translated forms? You're going to be working with people whose language is not the same as the language that you're conducting the study in. And there are others. There's a long range and then of possibilities for consent, and they start to head into other medical areas too. However, you'll notice here they remind you to complete certain appendices, right? And then here they want you to describe the consent process in detail, like where you're gonna meet with people, and then you're gonna sit down, you're gonna talk to them, they're gonna do it online. Where are you gonna keep the documents? There's a lot probably in that investigator's manual and elsewhere about the requirements for storing documents, how safe they have to be. They want to know exactly where they're going to be, folks. We used to just say, well, they'll be in the PI's office in a locked cabinet. That doesn't cut it anymore. They want to be able to go and get them. So if somebody calls, somebody who's in a study, a parent calls and says, hey, these people are abusing my child in their study. The human subjects folks want to be able to pull out their approval form, see exactly where you're keeping your documents, and they want to go to that room and get those documents and see whether or not you have a signed consent and you actually talk to that parent about what their child will be involved in. Okay. How long will consents be maintained after conclusion of the project? The UA standard is you maintain it for 6 years, but you could do otherwise. So I will tell you, folks, we have piles and piles of documents that we have to store in our department. We give up whole rooms in our college just to store completed research documents, and we don't always do the best job of getting rid of them after 6 years. Please select the methods of data collection that will be employed. This goes on for quite a long way. In most single subject studies, you would be clicking on participant observation. Down here is where you actually put in the details of the procedure. So you just go to the procedure section of your proposal. Drop those things in here, right? Time commitment for subject participation. Got to estimate. So let's look at benefits, costs, compensation, and risks. This is just simple, guys. You don't have to get out of control or with answering this question. Simple statements, couple lines. That's all that's required. Same thing with minimizing risks to subjects and data. Privacy and confidentiality. Here again, they want to know exactly where the data is going to be stored and how it's going to be stored. You'll notice box at UA. They want to know that wherever you're putting this stuff, it is properly secured. And in this new digital age, we have to be really careful. Not everything is that's out there. Like, you can't just go dropping stuff in Google. You can't just go putting it in Dropbox. Box is UA's version of Dropbox, and it has special security protections that allow us to use it for secure data storage. Oh, you can take a look at these. How and why subjects will be removed. Just let them know here that folks have the opportunity to get out of the study if they want to. Let them know that if they want continuing assistance with the intervention, even if they drop out of your study, they get to have that. You can't say, well, you're not in my study anymore, so you don't get to have the help that I was providing. Yeah, a parent can say, look, I like my kids sitting on that inflatable ball at their desk. It seems to be really good for them, but I really don't want you'd be collecting data on them anymore. You have to be prepared to say, great, I'm glad I could help. Okay. That about covers it, except you can see this long list of things that they would want from you. I don't expect you to include all those, all right, in your project. Just try to answer the questions in here and reflect on them. And even in some sections, if all you want to write is I have no idea what to do for this, or it seems ridiculous, I'm okay with that. I just want you to consider each of these sections. At the very end of it is where you would sign your name as principal investigator. Also, your department, you would turn all this stuff into your department first before it ever goes over to IRB. The department would review it and sign it here, scientific scholarly review, and then your department chair would sign it next. Then it would come back to you. It would all get put together in a big package electronically and sent over to IRB. That's how the process works. So this video's gone even longer than I expected it to. I hope that's helpful to you. I hope it's helpful in helping you consider the human subjects application documents. And contact me by email if you have any more questions. And if you have any more questions in terms of finishing up your project and finishing up the semester. All right? Okay. Have a great day.